Hi, I'm Jane Marks, and this is From the Heart. During this pandemic, one thing that we've missed is the distraction and the entertainment of live sports. Well, to help us fill some of that void today, I'm so thrilled to be joined today by Leonard Hamilton. Leonard is the head men's basketball coach at Florida State University. Not only are we having to battle the coronavirus, but we're also having to contend with the pandemic of racial inequality and police brutality. More and more, we're seeing that sports are taking a leading role in shaping the movement. Before we dig in any deeper, let me introduce our special guest, Coach Hamilton. He has been a collegiate head coach for 30 years and arrived at Florida State in 2002. Prior to coming to Florida State, he coached at Oklahoma State University and the University of Miami. And I gotta say, he is also one of Florida State's winningest basketball coach. So congratulations to that. Congratulations on the ACC win this year. And this is not the first time, is it?
Well, our team has really been improving over the years. We're very excited about it.
He says improving. I would say that is a mild statement here. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Coach Hamilton. We're delighted to have you today. Now, you were the first basketball player at the University of Tennessee at Martin. And, not only that, you've been the first and the pioneer in so many situations. And so how did these early experiences, being the first black athlete in so many settings, shape your coaching style and your leadership style?
I think there's no doubt that my early upbringing gave me a lot of confidence, and I gained a lot of wisdom doing that process of growing up in segregation. And I think my focus was a lot different, has always been a lot different. Just try to find ways to be successful and represent your family and those which you are working for. And so I've always been able to shut out all the distractions. I've always been extremely very focused, and I think I always have been able to separate what's the most important things. And from our player standpoint, and the youngsters I work for, I've always focused on trying to make sure they get their education and that they accomplish the really true approach of taking them from teenagers to young adults.
From teenagers to young adults. And these teens are faced with so many issues today, particularly when you look at just the last 3 or 4 weeks, with the death of George Floyd, with Breonna Taylor, with Rayshard Brooks. There's just been so many things that they have to face. And so part of some of the conversations that you may have already had with some athletes or you're going to have when they return, it's got to be part of your thinking at this point.
Well, there's no doubt that we become family figures, father, mother type figures to youngsters that come away from home and they're under our tutelage for the period of time they're in school. And so we talk about all these kinds of things in advance. We try to operate in a preventive posture. There's no doubt that these things have been traumatic, the things that have happened as of late, but hopefully we've done a very good job preparing them for the unexpected. We deal with that an awful lot, and we talk about things so that when these things come up, that they understand why they're happening and the mindset we need to be in to deal with them.
You make an excellent point when you talk about establishing a family. I've heard this about you before, that you do a tremendous job of creating that sense of belonging and that sense of family. And you've been able to do this year after year after year. How does that happen?
Well, the parents are going to trust you with their most precious gift, that's their child. You got to make sure that you treat their child like you'd want them to treat yours if yours was with them. And so that's how we make all our decisions. But we also try to discipline them, give them the information, because you have so many distractions nowadays with the social media and the outside influences that youngsters can be exposed to. So I think we just take our jobs very seriously. We want to win basketball games. The most important thing is raising youngsters from teenagers to young men.
See, I know some secrets about you that maybe our audience doesn't know. I have seen you take a look at individual players and not only look at what's going on the basketball court, but also going on in their community and you look for other opportunities even outside basketball. And to me, that's a special coach.
Well, what we try to do is give these guys a realistic approach of what life is going to be back for them after basketball is over. I mean, because basketball is short-lived. The ball's going to stop bouncing at some point in time.
The ball's going to stop bouncing. We're going to remember that point.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And so we know that they're going to be husbands, fathers, neighbors, and citizens. And then people they're gonna be that forever. They're not gonna be basketball players or Florida State basketball players, in the eyesight of
Although that's a
of
great
life.
thing to be.
Yes, even though for the present, that's fine. So we just try to prepare them like we want somebody to prepare our child if our child's with them. And I'm very proud of the fact we've been here 18 years, we've only had 2 kids not graduate.
Are you kidding? That is a phenomenal record. Just as an aside, can you just tell us how many wins you've had in your career? I just know the audience wants to know this.
To be very honest with you, I have absolutely no idea how many games we've won.
You don't?
I don't ever worry about it. I don't ever keep up with it.
That's a good point. So in other words, you're looking ahead as opposed to what's behind you.
No, I'm always just trying to do my job one day at a time. I'm not coaching to see how many wins that I can achieve. The most important thing is to create an atmosphere where our players reach their full potential, academically, athletically, and socially.
Before we dig in any deeper, I know you are so interested in what Coach Hamilton has to say because he's teaching us a lot today. And so stay with us. We'll be back in a few minutes. We're discussing leading in victory and in crisis with Coach Leonard Hamilton. And with so many figures like LeBron James, Bubba Wallace, and even Roger Goodell, they've been taking the lead in advancing the conversation around Black Lives Matter. And Coach Hamilton, we want to know your take on how you will lead this current crop of basketball players that are going to be returning to school. How do you think you're going to be leading that conversation?
Well, I think first you have to give LeBron a lot of credit. He's made some initiatives in terms of education. He's making a difference for the future of our players, the future of our youngsters, making sure that they educate themselves. And also he's developed an initiative of putting emphasis on voting. That's so very, very important. And the reason I bring that up because I think that not only is he working for the future, but he realized the most important thing for us to do is create an atmosphere of importance of our guys, our people, our nation, getting out and voting. I like to see more of us get involved with trying to create change. Sometimes the conversation is good, but how can we be creative enough to see can we figure out ways to really affect change and as well as having conversation?
As well as have the conversation. I think you're right about that. We do see a lot of the sports figures taking the lead, and I think particularly because your last season has been so successful, they're going to look to you and they're going to look to your players. Your players have a reputation for always handling themselves in a certain way and carrying themselves a certain way. It's kind of like the old-fashioned way when I grew up. They used to teach us how to handle ourselves in different situations, and that's what we see coming from you. I mean, are you purposeful about that, or is that you're just leading by being a role model?
Well, that's part of the educational process with youngsters. If all we do is just coach the games, then it'd be short-lived. The most important thing we do is trying to help these young men develop the skills that's going to take for them to be successful in life, and that's far more important.
Do the guys ever come to you? Because again, they will be coming back with, under different circumstances. Do they ever come to you with personal issues and personal pain, or do you send them and you say, well, we have a counselor over here who can take care of this, or Coach, no, I really need to talk to you?
No, we actually have unbelievable personal relationships with our players. We have a tremendous culture, and they know that it's real and we are transparent. A lot of times as a group, we get together and close the doors and we have grown men conversations. But that's part of the process. But we're just like parents. We have to develop those relationships because even though they look like big grown adults, they're still youngsters developing their lives, their ideas, and their philosophies about life. We got to be part of that journey. Just like when you sit them down and talk to them about things they have not been exposed to. I'm just happy that they have the level of confidence in us to know they can come to us with anything personal or something to public, and we can all deal with it as a family.
As a family. And there's another unique quality or characteristic that you have that I don't know if this is characteristic among all coaches, but you've got a pretty well developed spiritual side, and we can see that so often, down on the court. We see a sense of faith among the guys as certainly as they're playing. I mean, do you have that sense? Do the kids come there with this, or is that something that's developed while they're under your tutelage?
Well, we all have to be who we are, and that's part of my journey. I never lived more than 50 yards from a church.
Is that
from the time
right?
I could ever remember. From the time I was 19 years old, we could hear the piano playing, the organ playing from our bedroom. And so our whole life centered around the spiritual aspect and growth of us as a family. And so I've always had that base. I've always felt that I've had a hedge of protection around me. I've always felt that I've had that guiding light that kept me from right, kept me doing right and always from wrong. But anytime I've tried to make bad decisions, I've always seemed to have somebody pushing me back in the right direction. I always think it's the good Lord upstairs.
I've got that guardian angel, but it seems to me that you're also doing the same thing for your players.
Well, there's no doubt that we have to be careful as coaches because we work for a state institution.
Right.
But we make it available for them. But for the most part, our guys fall in line, and that's who they are. We try to bring in high character youngsters, and the high character youngsters want to be around high character youngsters that's going to graduate, do what's right, and then try to represent the school and the community in an upstanding fashion.
That's interesting because one of the things I do know is that you're able to recruit some of the most fantastic players. When they see you coming, it's like E.F. Hutton. They are so thrilled to have that contact from you, and you've got this national reputation. But people will always say to me, he's such a humble person. And your players must pick up on that. In other words, when they leave, do they come back and they say to you, Coach Hamilton, here's the difference you've made in my life? I mean, 30 years is 30 years. That's a long time.
Well, actually, it's probably a little longer than 30. But in reality, we get that all the time. The most important thing to us as coaches, and when they send you a Father's Day card, they call you on Father's Day, they send you a Christmas card, they want you to be in their weddings, they want you to be there for those special occasions, they want you to be the godfather of the of the kids. Those things are very special. But it's more of it's not a 4-year relationship, it's more like a 40-year relationship because you develop those relationships and they're everlasting.
Everlasting relationships. Well, we've got to talk about that and so much more when we return. We'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, well, welcome back. Special leaders adapt to change, and we can tell that Coach Hamilton is one special leader. And as we come back, we're talking about the future of basketball and collegiate basketball and the changes, that will be occurring. How do you see college basketball rolling out this season?
Well, I think all of us in flux right now because we are dealing with the pandemic, and we cut the basketball season short because we were anticipating and had some fear of the unknown of how the virus was going to affect our everyday life. Now that it's gotten worse, and it seems to be getting worse, I'm not real confident that we're going to come back in a situation that's worse than the situation that we were in when we decided to cut the season short. I think that we have football, we have some of the fall sports that we're dealing with now, but more than anything else, it's uncertain as to how we're going to even start the school season, even in high school, elementary school, and in colleges.
Oh, I agree with you
I just think right now we're in the process of evaluating, making decisions, and I think we're going to have to wait and see what direction we go in relation to where we are and how we're dealing with the pandemic.
It's interesting because, working with teenagers, we try to stay updated on the information, and a lot of the schools, some of the universities, and we've contacted some of the universities, they've said, well, we're going to bring them back, but we're not going to have any participants out in the audience, and our players are going to have to learn how to play without, the fans. And and some are going to put pictures, out in the stands and so forth. Uh, If that were the case, how would you keep your guys motivated?
Well, there's no doubt that we're going to be fine. We'll deal with whatever the circumstances gives us. However, my concern mostly is that if it's situation is such that we don't want anybody in the stands, so do we expect the virus to stay in the stands and not be on the floor with the players?
That's a good point.
I mean, so my point to you, this is speculation right now. We have a long ways to go before I think we can make those decisions. We all are hopeful, and we want to stay positive to think that we can continue life as it has always been. But right now, this is a new normal, and I think that we're making decisions based on the information that we have. And I think right now there's a lot of uncertainty around. We're hopeful that we can have a season. We're hopeful that we can get a cure and a vaccine for what we're dealing with. But right now, I think a lot of that, those decisions are yet to be made.
Are yet to be made. Now, I'm curious about one thing. We have so many young people who are not ever going to be as talented as you, but still they desire to go into coaching. They like leading. Now, if you were to encourage a young person who is just loves sports, know they're not going to be the kind of talent that you have on the floor with you, but they still want to go in that field, what would you say to them?
I think the most important thing is that you have to have a clear understanding of what's all involved. And then you have to have a tremendous passion. But if you're going to be a coach, there's so many things you have to do as a coach. It's just not only going to the floor and coaching the X's and O's. You're dealing with the emotional part of youngsters developing a personality of how to get the most out of their potential. And every youngster is different. Everybody has a different personality. So you have to not only have the skills, the technical skills in terms of teaching the fundamentals and the execution of game plans, you have to have the ability to communicate and with different personalities to motivate them to get the very most out of who they are and what God has blessed them with. And then on top of that, then you have to have also the relationships with them to help guide them when they're on scholarship off the court. So it's all consuming as you try to go through navigating this part of being a college coach. Might be a little different when you're in high school, when they go home to their parents and you only have them doing certain parts of the day. So it depends on what level that you want to coach in, but the most important thing is learning all phases of it. The coaching part, the communication part, and the maturing development part as well.
Well, I think for kids who are certainly young athletes who are looking at coaching as a direction or a career, this is unbelievable, great information so that they can look at it from an inclusive perspective other than the skills. I like what you said about understanding communication skills, about being able to connect with people, but also you're saying something else. And this is also said about you, is that when it comes to coaching, you're also a very compassionate coach. And when you look at your track record, it's been pretty free of scandal. Most coaches, you're always going to hear one or two or three of these big stories. We've never heard that about you. And so I think the audience, as we listen to your story, they're getting a real glimpse of what a true hero is about. And that's part of what, From the Heart is all about. I think so many times teenagers will say, well, we don't have heroes. Well, you're certainly one of them. And you're giving us some great life lessons today.
Well, the most important thing for me is just to be who you are. And I was very fortunate to have a mother and a father who I thought gave me the proper guidance. And you have a mother and a father there in the home giving you consistent advice as to how to conduct yourself. And then being raised in the church, every time the door opened, we were in it.
Is that right?
I mean, from Sunday school to BTU to the Bible school, the vacation Bible school, the choir, the usher board, all the plays. We were there because that was part of our life. Even even younger, when my grandmother would take me to church with her every Sunday. I mean, so that's kind of who we are.
That's part of who you are, right?
That's who you are. That's what you're about as a person, and you don't ever get away from really being who you are. And if that's part of my nature, that's because I carry it, because that's the way I've been raised and that's what I've been taught, and it's been working for us. And I try to be consistent with my behavior.
You know, today we have a coach who is not only centered, who's seasoned, who has institutional knowledge, but most importantly, he's grounded with real life rules. And so we can't wait for you to join us so we can have our final thoughts. We're so happy that you joined us. And you know, we're having our final thoughts with Coach Hamilton, but you know what we really want to know? We really want to know is, what do you see in the sports world moving forward? You know, for the future of the sports world, you're right. These are unprecedented times. And so what you thinking, Coach Hamilton?
Well, you see a lot of indecision going on right now, a lot of discussion. The NBA is trying to finish up their season that was lost last year, and they have a different arrangement where they recommended that they bring all the teams to one location and try to finish the season up in Orlando. Yeah, a lot of the baseball practices are starting. Then a couple of guys come down with the virus and they're stopping it. Some of the football teams have come back in, and that college football teams, and they've had issues and they've had to start practice and stop. So I think that just things are in flux now, and we all are planning to go down with a certain direction, but it appears that we're just making decisions as we go. If the virus keeps spiking, so to speak, I think it's going to dictate the decisions that we make. And I'm hoping that we have sports, but right now I would say that it's 50-50 as to what we're going to do.
And you know what I love? I also love just the down-to-earth character that we have in one of the finest basketball coaches in this country. So from the heart, we want you to make sure that you take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.